we'll
Thank you.
move on to Shankar Bharadwaj ji. In the schedule, we have the talk by Arjun Anand ji. Arjun Anand ji, are you available?
Yes, sir. I
Okay,
am.
okay. So we'll move on to Arjun Anand ji. Arjun Anand ji is a doctoral candidate at JNU. He is a doctoral candidate at Special Center for the Study of Northeast India. He is a UGC Senior Research Fellow in Political Science. He has qualified for the NET in International and Area Studies. His research interests include Jammu Kashmir, Indian contemporary thought, sacred spaces, and political theory. Arjun's MPhil dissertation focused on the political philosophy of Bhaṭṭa Medhātithi, while his doctoral research explores the sacred geography of Assam, especially looking at swadeśī categories and collective belongingness through the lens of Tirtha traditions. A student rights activist for over a decade, Arjun contested for General Secretary in the 2023-24 in JNU Student Union elections. He is also the national convener of Students for Holistic Development of Humanity Foundation, a student-led platform with 34 university teams across India, dedicated to developing holistic research approaches and academic leadership. SHODH organizes various academic initiatives, including internships, workshops, and seminars, such as research internship on Mahakumbh held in Prayagraj earlier this year. Arjun's commitment to academic leadership and the pursuit of knowledge defines his academic journey. We are fortunate to have such youngsters coming into the field of study of topics like statecraft, governance, and leadership. He chose in a very innovative way a topic of a Dharma Shastra, a commentary text for the civilizational state insights. That's a really innovative thinking. His topic is envisioning Bharat as a civilizational state, insights from Manubhāṣya of Medhātithi. People know Medhātithi's commentary of Manusmṛti as one of the interesting and very useful and very much consulted commentary of Manusmṛti. But to look at it from a civilizational state point of view is the innovative thinking on the part of Arjun Anand. Over to you, Arjun Anand. Please go ahead.
Namaste. Now, envisioning Bharat as a civilizational state, insights from Manubhāṣya of Medhātithi. So, when we say Bharat as a civilizational state, I am talking about civilizational state as a norms making or a normative power. So, we are not only a society which is importing knowledge theories, which is a good thing. We learn from all, but we are also producing knowledge. So when we engage with an Indian thinker like Medhātithi, I try to engage with him on his own terms, using Indian categories as analytical tools rather than targets of justification. I try conceptual excavation. I trace how core concepts like Rājadharma, moksha, jnana evolve within Sanskrit commentaries and local practices. Also, this exercise or this presentation is more about normative inquiry rather than descriptive reading of what he describes as the institutes of his time. How does those institutes make sense in a normative sense, in a sense of ideational paradigm within which they are beneficial to the loka? So we have seen recently that there is a lot of political conviction also as far as the civilizational character of Bharat goes in the Panchaprana of Amrit Kal, or even in a little bit in policy making, but more we are in a stage when people have started to talk about it even in the higher echelons of power. For example, when recently our Prime Minister said in a statement in UN General Assembly that when India grows, the world grows. and when India reforms, the world transforms. When I see the transformation, when we make sense of this growth or reform, we have to understand that the drishti of this growth and transformation has to be grounded on swadeshi terms, Swadeshi norms, and then only it can be holistic as well as sustainable. Then only harmony can prevail over homogeneous tendencies, and a responsible or a dharma-based approach can be taken. Then only Sanyam can take over rank hedonism or informed choices over free choice. And the presentation will try to touch upon all these. Will try to touch upon the normative character of how to make sense or how to envision a civilizational state following themes vis-a-vis Medhātithi but Manubhāṣya to derive insights from the text, perennial or Sanatan political wisdom. So the first part is the author and the text. Now, Bhaṭṭa Medhātithi was an erudite scholar who, in his extensive commentary on Manusmṛti, called as Manubhāṣya, contextualized the eternal morality or śāśvata of the Shastras according to his immediate deśa-kāla realities, and he actually, which is a Shastri position, he justifies that according to the tradition only. Every position he takes. He was active in at around 9th century, and P.V. Kane also agrees that he belonged to 825 and 900 CE. And the genius Kashmiri proclaimed that Aryavarta consciousness, he does not give the term Aryavarta consciousness, K.M. Munshi gives the term, but he does discuss it as the civilizational self-image that inspires Dharmic unity to remake the Mleccha yoke or colonial intervention from the greater Indian region. Now, he was an original thinker, but grounded in his own tradition, that was Purva Mimamsa school of Astic thought, Astic knowledge, and he was well versed in Itihas and Purana traditions. He was very thorough in his analysis. It is the most extensive and oldest available commentary on Manusmṛti till date. Now he extensively cites many other Smritikars also. He in his in he was also cited by his successors who commented on Manusmṛti and other Dharma Shastra literatures. He even cited scholars like Kumaril Bhaṭṭa, who he refers to as Bhaṭṭapāda, Adi Shankaracharya, Chanakya, Shabar in his exhaustive work dealing with Dharma. He repeatedly refers to Puranic literature and names Vyasa as their author. Now, we must keep in mind that when we talk of a text such as Manusmṛti or Medhātithi or Dharma Shastra texts, there is a defined end to these texts, and they talk about their end to be the attainment of Purusharthas. So Medhātithi says that a combination of jnana and karma, and because he was a Mimamsaka, so he gives prominence to karma. Jnana and karma is essential to attain all the Purusharthas, and not much is known about his personal life. And traditional Hindu writers have this deliberate habit of omitting details of their personal lives, which Professor Kapila Vatsyayan writes about in her work on Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra, and I quote her that his search is for the new unique self. Instead, it is for submerging himself in a perennial flow, and this applies to Medhātithi also. Now, when we talk about the text, Manubhāṣya, now it is a commentary on Manusmṛti, and Manu is considered a progeny of Brahma, an ancestor of Bhagwan Ram, and is revered as Bhagwan in Hindu traditions. And this text was put forth, as I said, for the purpose of making known the means of achieving the ends, which are the four Purusharthas. And like all Hindu texts, Manusmṛti's exact date is not known. Now, the focal text of this presentation, Manubhāṣya, I have taken two published works. One is from Chokhamba Krishnadas Academy, which is the original Sanskrit of Medhātithi's Manubhāṣya, and second is Mahamahopadhyay's English commentary, English translation, Ganganath Jha's English translation of the work. It is clear from several manuscripts of Manubhāṣya. Even Buhler makes this point in his work on Manusmṛti, that a king named Madanpal, son of Sadharana, restored the text by collecting the surviving manuscripts from another country at the end of 14th century. This historical fact does prove that Manubhāṣya was quite a popular and respected commentary of his period. All the esteemed later day Bhashyakars on Manusmṛti like Govindaraj, Kulluk Bhatt, Sarvajya Narayan, Raghavananda cite Medhātithi's work. Manuscripts of Medhātithi's Manubhāṣya make it amply clear that the text of Manusmṛti in his time was identical to what we have now. Now, when we try to understand Rājya, it's very interesting that even the previous presenter of me, Shri Ramji, also said that the prosperity is important when we talk about economics, even dharmanomics, that it is the prosperity which has to be sustained, and GDP is only one part of that. Medhātithi defines Rājya as a prosperous people. Prajaishwaryam hi rajyamuchyate, he writes. And interestingly, he asked the question after that, that since it is only the prosperity of the people that is called Rājya, when the people are in trouble, where would the kingdom lie? So, in a way, he's saying that if the people are not prosperous, it cannot be even called a Rājya. It is a key point when we try to understand the civilization state according to Medhātithi. So, needless to but prosperous does not here connote a crass capitalist meaning of the word. Since the ends of the text is to facilitate the attainment of Purusharthas, the state too becomes the mean to the oft-stated ends. This is where the discussion on the Indian civilizational state and its distinct normative performative character comes into picture. And we have seen that uh, as a civilization, India has been there. Bharat is an entity, and recently we have seen an organic expression of that living culture and its tradition. And every country needs a civilizational narrative to unite its people towards common goals like economic prosperity, communal harmony, to check against foreign intervention and socio-political stability. Thus, it will also be feasible to work out methods of healthy and equal engagement with the West or the world outside India once we have a better understanding of ourselves and our chitta and kal. Now, in addition to its material benefits, taking a civilizational sense of history and identity is an effective remedy for pedagogical decoloniality also. Additionally, if IKS, as we have seen a surge in IKS these days, if it is not merely an antiquarian enterprise and has immense potential to frame and solve real world problems, it has to provide normative guidance on the workings, limitations of, and reforms for Indian polity and its allied apparatus. Now, from this worldview, Bharat is not just a territorial entity, though the Desh is important, but it is not merely a territorial entity. Medhātithi defines Aryavarta in a civilizational sense when he writes that if a prince of good reputation from the Kshatriya Varna or some other jati subdues the Mlechas or the colonizers and introduces Chaturvarnya, the land would become fit to perform Vedic yajna. Brahmavarta, he states, has no inherent sanctity. So Brahmavarta has no inherent sanctity. It would be Mlecha Desha if the Mlechas conquered it and resided there. Now this applies clearly. We have a recent example of Pakistan to make sense of this statement of Medhātithi, that it has no inherent sanctity and it would be Mlecha Desha if the Mlechas conquered it and resided there. He frames his argument around the Vedic tradition of Chaturvarnya and Yajna. Likewise, there are other living traditions, institutions, and practices that sustains India as a civilizational entity. For example, Tirthyatra, Varnashram Dharma is one of them, Guru Shishya Parampara, and so on and so forth. But in normative terms, Varna Dharma at his time represented the key pedagogical medium to sustain or pass on the traditional knowledge through generations and even maintain the prosperity of the Dharmic Rājya among the people who live in the sacred land of Bharat. So it should not be taken as a static social order as it is taken now, as it is believed to be now. And therefore, K.M. Munshi termed his civilizational vision as Aryavarta consciousness. Medhātithi makes it amply clear that it is called Aryavarta in the sense that Aryas live there. Arya vartante tatra. That is, it is they that are born here again and again, and the militias or the colonizers, even though attacking it repeatedly, do not remain there. So, moving forward, when we talk about his structure of the state, he do agrees with the Sapta Prakriti or the Saptang theory of state. He do differ with Arthashastra on a few basic points, like he terms Janapada as Rashtra and he takes Pura instead of Durga. But as far as the normative character of this structure goes, because this is a descriptive thing, but what we see here is the drishti of organic ontology. Now, Hindu thought process is dominated by a principle of oneness of the microcosm and microcosm, yatha pinde tatha brahmande. Hence, the symbolism of the body becomes important here. The world imagined by the Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas is considered as being whole and emerges from a unitary garbha or egg. We say Brahmand, that is why we say Brahmand, which is sometimes depicted as a cosmic body. It is what Diana Eck refers to as an organic ontology, where the body's symbolism is used to construct an integrated worldview. We see the same in the Purush Sukta in Vedas. We see the same in the way how Shakti Pithas are spread throughout the land, and it is a vision which prioritizes or which makes sense of things uh, as indispensable parts, the various constituents of states as indispensable parts of a body, and they are all important in their own way. So the union of state would not seem a conception arising out of a vision of organic ontology, because it arises from a compartmentalized vision, from a vision which seeks conflict in a way and see things in silos. So the Saptang theory of state cannot be made of sense outside of this drishti. When Medhātithi talks about judiciary, he makes inclusivity one point, and the High Court of Justice, which he says mainly consisted of, even Manu says that consisted of the Rajan, counselors, and learned Brahmins. But Medhātithi, in exceptional circumstances, he admits other parties to the court. When the parties are members of same professional guilds, such as traders, cultivators, and cattle breeders, other members of that profession believe they will be affected by the judgment. They are entitled to participate in the investigation. Now, see, Medhātithi also, uh, which was the hierarchy in judiciary was a fact, but he also goes a step ahead when he tries to justify local uh, methods of conflict resolution. For example, he says that the disputes are settled by five: Kula, Shreni, Gana, Adhikrita, and Nripa. So Raja, then Nripa is the highest, and these constitute the very foundation of case proceedings. And among these, the following is superior to the proceeding. So local, family, jati, and guild customs are to be honored and enforced by the king, Medhātithi argues, only if they are not directly in conflict with Vedas and public morality, he argues. So he respects the decentralization of judiciary. He respects that there are local customs which can be more pragmatic and organic ways of dealing of dispensing justice or nyaya. Now, when we come to Rājadharma, so we will be talking about the normative basis of what are the duties, and Medhātithi also says that Rājadharma denotes what ought to be done by the king. So, and he makes it quite clear when he writes that Dharma Shabda Kartavyata Vachana Ityuktam. So it is for Kartavya of the Raja or the state, which here is meant by the uh, Rājadharma, the term Rājadharma. He further elucidates that the duty of the king is of two types, of the Bhavendra is of two types, Drishtartha and Adrishtartha. Now, Adrishtartha are Agnihotri and other spiritual things, but he says that Drishtartha, which are visible duties, he declares that in the present context, it is the former that is chiefly dealt with. And in fact, it is only those forms of activity that are generally known as Raj Dharma. In other words, Raj Dharma comprises chiefly of the ruler's public acts. Or to put it more generally, it is synonymous with politics or the responsibility of the kings that are visible. So Raj Dharma denotes only public acts of good, not though he says that they are Raj Dharma Adrishta, but they are not included in the Raj Dharma as discussed in the text. There are two traditions to ascertain Rājadharma, he says. One is Vedic, which is Dharma Shastra, and the other is non-Vedic, which he termed as Arthashastra. And the later is subordinate to the former in the Astic view, and he had the same view. Now, the ruler is the protector of the people, whose duty consists of doing good for the common people. This is quite a common definition in all the Dharma Shastras, that the ruler protects the people in exchange of tax, and he is the head of the state, but the real power rests in Dharma. So here comes Dharma as a normative authority which even rules over the king. So the king is not the highest authority, and the Rājadharma lies in punishing the wicked, working within the bounds of Dharma and protection of the people in exchange of taxes. Now, it must be understood that it was a consensual opinion among all the Vidwans on Rajniti Shastra in the traditional sense that Dharma was the king of kings, and Dharma as a normative paradigm was accepted as a network of mostly context sensitive responsibilities. It was a distribution of responsibilities among all the constituents of the state, and it can be understood with the allied conception of first principles, if we take it from the first principles approach of Pancharina. And in this framework, we can say that rights are believed to flow out of responsibilities and not the other way around. If the society, if all the constituents of the state are doing their duties, are are, uh, are 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 doing their responsibilities, then the rights would be a natural outcome of that, rather than the other way around. If everyone is asking for rights, then it becomes problematic according to his drishti. Now, what I argue here is that the rule of dharma is actually the rule of people. So Medhātithi explains the term dharma as that which a person should do. Now, person, he used the word person also, and we must keep in mind that because we are talking about organic ontology, about the oneness of microcosm and macrocosm, every constituent of the Rājya has some responsibilities. So the person here is also applies to not only to the common householder, also to the king and various functionaries of the state. Now, a person should do and which is conducive to his welfare and of a character different from such acts as are amenable to perception and the other means, ordinary means of knowledge. So he's taking a shastric position that Shastra are the highest form of knowledge. And as a consequence, even Manu writes that dharma must be safeguarded at all costs, because dharma protects those who protect themselves. Who protects dharma, dharma rakshati rakshita. Medhātithi elaborates on this point and writes that dharma should not be corrupted by fear, since if it is, it will ruin our prosperity. So it cannot be founded on fear, as well as the prosperity of the sinful party and his supporters. Similarly, when dharma is preserved, it removes risks from all sources, so that even when angered, the vanquished party cannot hurt anyone. So, as a result, because happiness and misery are determined by dharma, and happiness and misery here does not mean the consumerist definition of happiness and misery, one should not deviate from it. If we transgress dharma, it will lash back at us like an infuriated serpent. And we should safeguard dharma. Now, it must be kept in mind that these are normative terms, but there were institutions to keep the state in check. So there was a checks and balances institutionalization to keep a check on the autocratic tendencies. Further, the king has no authority over the ordinances pertaining to religious acts, such as the Agnihotra and the like. Smriti scriptures would find such control repugnant, Medhātithi writes. According to him, king's dharma for the people's observance refers to executive arrangement only. कार्य व्यवस्था तक वो सीमित रहेगा. That is not opposed to shastras or custom. So normative parallels with the debates on the imposition of the Eurocentric secular paradigm on the Indian society can also be understood from this. So in a dharmic rajya, according to Medhātithi, the king owes his position to no divine sanction, but to the wishes of the people. We will discuss this later also. He even calls the conflation of king with Prajapati, which was the position, which as the position was accepted by Manu also. It was a Shastric position. He calls it a eulogy. So even in a conflict among the people because of some act of Amatya, the prime minister, The people are to be given primacy in the conflict resolution process, Medhātithi argues thus. Yes, and unless the Parthiv does justice, in the sense given above, his sovereignty does not become fully established. So the danda is legitimate only when it is done in a certain manner. Commenting on Manu's injunction that neither the father or the preceptor or the friend or the mother or the wife or the son or the priest is unpunishable for the king when they do not keep within their dharma, Medhātithi notes that anyone who fails to perform his or her dharma or who deviates from them should be punished. The king should punish himself for whatever crime he commits, as this is the only way he can hold other men in control. So there is the role of example also, which he calls as samācāra. So misuse of state power was strongly condemned and was said to bring catastrophic ills for the king. And there was a pragmatic, other than the metaphysical element that he will be punished by the gods, in the even in the world beyond, there was also a pragmatic suggestion here that he comments that the king who thoughtlessly oppresses his praja and loses his life, family, and kingdom. He further elaborates that he is slain even by single men who happen to be possessed of daring and unmindful of their life. Now, when we talk about Medhātithi as a political thinker, I think, given the contemporary circumstances, there are three normative takeaways which I want to discuss from his work. And the first among it is the prioritization of politics. So we know that in Indian Dharma Shastra and in Mahabharata and Shastra, there is a concept of Matsya Nyaya. And according to Medhātithi, the need for state arose for the protection of Loka from anarchy. So from protection from Arajakta, and the protection of weak, the orphans, widows, elder persons. Uh, it literally means the logic of the tyranny of the strong. So that is why the state emerges. The dharmic state is basically conceived to keep a check on Matsya Nyaya tendencies, Medhātithi says. The Devas pray to Dharma in Vara Purana. There is a mention of when the Devas pray to Dharma, you are Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas respectively, manifesting in the good, the common, and the bad people. The principle of Matsya Nyaya is informed by the existence of Rajas and Tamas along with Sattva in the world, which breeds jealousy, lust, hatred, and unjust violence. So it is a reality. It is based on that reality that state is imagined as an entity which should be there to protect the weak. And recent violent uprisings in India's neighborhood countries is a glaring example of this fact. It is for this reason, wrote Medhātithi, that the people were allowed to keep personal arms and in case of an emergency, use them incurs no sin. And Manu says that in the absence of state, even the trees would be felled. So it is not only harm, it does not only harm humans, it harms the other forms of life also. So dharma as the normative principle sustain the state, and the perennial dharma, the Sanatan dharma, which represents, as we said, the core of this civilization. It as a sustainable knowledge paradigm has immense potential to frame and solve real world problems, also to provide normative guidance on the workings of Indian polity and its allied apparatus. But the Yaksha Prashna is whether the various constituents of Indian state accept it or repress it. And it is an accepted fact that this civilizational vision is something that was somewhat suppressed in the post independence policy making in India until recently. Hence, we are witnessing a resurgence of IKS, and we can see here that there we also witness a kind of a, what we can say, a disillusionment in the masses regarding the role of politics, how it is a dirty thing and we should not get involved in this. And there is a dharmic view of the receding virtues in yugas also, that earlier yugas are presented as better times with little to no use of danda, but with the arrival of Kali Yuga, dharma stands on one leg and falsehood and lust and greed become the norm. And the Kali Yuga is an era of darkness where tamsikta rules. Still, Medhātithi makes a pertinent point and argues that Krita Yuga can be established by an able Rajan ruling with Dharma as the foundation. So much would be determined by the governing classes' character and disposition by their vision. So politics is important. As a result, the importance of politics and the penal system, Dandaniti, is paramount in Hindu worldview, as far as even the Medhātithi goes, and it can be ignored at our own peril, and we can argue that IKTs or the IKS are pro politics and believe it to be intricately embedded in the dharmic life world. The second point is when we see Viksit Bharat, we must approach it from a first principles approach. So, first principles approach is when we go beyond popular assumptions and rebuild solutions or theories from fundamental elements or questions. So, let us understand this approach from an example. For instance, if someone asks a Hindu the question, "Are you a secular?" A plain answer in yes or no would be legitimizing the ambiguous conceptual premise of the question of the term secular. What does it mean? You accept the definition or the misunderstanding of the questioner. But if this question is met with a counter question like, what does the term secular even mean? Or how is it relevant in a dharmic society? Or how does being secular help in attaining the four purusharthas? This can be termed as a first principles approach of taking a theory or an institution or a problem head on. So a framework like Purusharthas can come in handy while analyzing the success of political conceptions, even policy making frameworks and institutions from the first principles approach. And we must be knowing that the four Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, offers a harmonious approach to fulfilling life. Even Medhātithi discusses it and provides for a comprehensive classification of dharma, five-fold classification of dharma. And Purushartha Chatushtaya neither demonizes the worldly pleasure nor supports hedonistic degeneracy. It accepts all aspects of life as relational and complementary. And this balanced and context-sensitive approach and dharma-bound approach at last results in bondage, in release from all the bondage and context, that is moksha. Now, it must be noted that dharmic vision does not promote asceticism for all. So, brahmacharya or sannyasa is not for all. So, it is a prosperous people that is defined, that the state is defined by, according to Medhātithi. And dharma is also defined as both nishreyasa, which is adhyatmic accomplishments, and abhyudaya, which is worldly affluence. And Medhātithi proclaims that while pondering over a past failure, a householder should never consider himself as unfortunate. Instead, to his very last breath, and Medhātithi writes this, that to his very last breath, he must always try to acquire artha. He quotes the Subhashita to further elaborate his point, and it goes like this: It is only persons devoid of manly courage that seek to examine the aspects of planets." So he kind of criticizing Jyotish Vidya also. There's nothing unattainable for such persons as are endowed with courage and energy. Now, when we take Purushartha Chatushtaya or the conception of moksha, we must also, what I've tried to do here is add one little part, that we can go to the concept of political liberty or liberty in general, as the highest ideal. It is even a part of our preamble. So when we revisit freedom from such a perspective, because moksha is actually freedom from all material contexts, even mind, intellect, and ego. So it is the highest form of freedom, and there are lower forms of freedom. But the dharmic polity is also facilitator of the highest form of freedom, and the subordinate forms of freedom are just stages of this process. I would like to take a quote of excerpt from Swami Karpatriji Maharaj's Marxwad and Ram Rājya. He notes that Paryapta freedom, which is to enjoy sensory pleasures. Now, this is an ideal, the dharma. Uh, has to be sacrificed to get superior freedom. Any citizen gets freedom only by following various Rajakiya, Samajik, Adhyatmic, and Dharmic rules. The more one becomes habitual of following Dharmic and Adhyatmic rules, the more he is considered free and civilized. A person who firmly follows rules in practice of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi can uh, finally enjoy complete freedom and happiness by getting rid of bondage of body, senses, mind, and intellect and karma. Otherwise, even if freedom is the ultimate desire, without the adoption of proper rules or dharma bound rules, the creature gets caught in the bondage of horrific dependence. Uh, Now, see, even Medhātithi explains sukha as the absence of want. It is not that he's discouraging the artha. He's saying that we should go after artha, but sukha is the absence of want. That as an ideal is there. So it is noteworthy that unlike the hegemonic modern consumerist ideal, this Sanatan political theory of liberty is not only eco-sensitive, but it is also sustainable. And that that is why Medhātithi prescribes that the state in no way can interfere in the matters of dharma of the people. And the normative treasury of ICAS is replete with such analytical frameworks, whether it is Panchakosha or India as a Tirtha Bhumi, or even Triguni Prakriti, to name a few. Now, the third key takeaway is that when we make sense of our realities, Indian realities, we many a times use Western theories, and it is totally fine to do that. But most of the times, there are certain binaries in which we try to force fit our realities that do not make sense at all. And I'm trying to show it from the writings of Medhātithi. So now, Medhātithi defines Sanatan Dharma as that which is established by long tradition. So it is old. It is not modern. It is old, not merely set up by the people of the present day. It is there are interventions, he says, not merely set up by the people of the present day. Hence, its essence does not change with this changing Deshan call. Its body might, but its essence does not. All the ancestral practices and ideas are continuously revisited and recontextualized according to the Deshkal needs, keeping śāśvata and Dharma as the basis. Hence, the binary itself seems like a colonial construct of Western imperialist vision, which propagates its present as the future goal of traditional non-Western societies and states. Now, within a traditional framework, this binary does not make any sense, and I'm using the word traditional here in the sense that it is used in Shastras, and even A.K. Sharan used this in his work, that this binary makes no sense as a living tradition is never static. It is always being informed by the past, but yet it is always recontextualizing itself. For example, there is an example of Samanya Dharma, which are eternal for all contexts, for all people. The Indian reality seems to transcend reductionist Western binaries like left, right, or even conservative, radical, or progressive, regressive. S.N. Balgangadhar also writes that the need to explicate what it means to be Indian or what makes Indian culture Indian and not just say modern will soon become a task for the intelligentsia of India. And when we talk about Medhātithi, now there are many examples in which he gives this, he problematizes this binary of tradition and modern. For example, he terms Pashubali as Arthavad. Now, Arthavad is any statement or a mythic story which extols a certain vidhi, which inspires you to do something, or which tells you to not do something. For example, Kumaril Bhaṭṭa says that Swarga and Narka are Arthavadas to so that the people behave well. So he says that Pashubali is an Arthavad. No one is free to do any killing or engineering of living beings. Medhātithi argues that the Shastric injunctions of Pashubali are mere Arthavadas and contends that such an injunction could not be intended for the animals. He even says that Shudras are allowed to rule, though it was not his exclusive position. Even centuries before the times of Medhātithi, Purva-Mīmāmsak giant like Kumaril Bhatt had observed that all four Varnas are seen as rulers of kingdoms. And even Kulluk Bhatt in his commentary on Manusmṛti moots this point. But he says that in the absence of Kshatriya, even a Shudra can be a king if he fulfills all these requirements. Otherwise, the people would become exterminated. Now, likewise, Medhātithi, after accepting the injunction of Manu, now see, he is accepting the injunction of Manu, he is following the tradition that the Kshatriya alone is entitled to kingship. He accepts that, he further adds to the point that in the absence of the Kshatriya, however, a substitute also may be accepted. Another example, in Shatapatha Brahmana, Rajanya is described as most manifestly of the Prajapati, as while being one, he rules over many. And Manu voices the same opinion. But Medhātithi makes it amply clear that the divine origin of Rajan is a pure eulogium. It is a eulogy. It is a Mahima Mandan. He even, though it was an infrequent practice, sati, but he even equated it with suicide. He considered it as a suicidal act and hence forbidden to women by the authority of Shruti. Now, when it comes to Shruti and handling diversity, as we have seen in a diverse society in India, we see the epistemic roots or the cultural roots of that also in Shabda Pramana. How? Now, Medhātithi says that we know that even a beginner of Hindu studies must know that the four Vedas are divided into various recensions, various shakhas, and Vedic Brahmin kulas are interested to keep their particular shakhas, the traditions alive. And these varying recensions are had always been geographically dispersed around the length and breadth of Bharat. That is why, argues Medhātithi, criticism of any Smriti text on the ground of Shabda Pramana is to be avoided. A mere mortal cannot know all the recensions. So, if something is prohibited in one Shakha, it is quite possible that the same thing is recommended in another. Furthermore, he writes that the supposed contradictory assertions are to be treated as Vikalpita Prayoga, operational alternatives. So if we find certain contradictory assertions, if we think that certain Shastric injunctions are contradictory in nature, they are to be treated as Vikalpita Prayogas. Now, in Dharmic tradition, scriptural authority in the because there is no better word for Shabda Praman, but Shabda Praman handles intellectual and even sampradayik and social diversity so beautifully, even institutional diversity so beautifully, and this provides a boost to traditional pluralism, which actually made Bharat a land of diversity in unity. We have also an example of his vision on judiciary, which I even said before, that when it comes to Manu's rule that king must take up the case of suitors in the order of their respective castes, Medhātithi points out that this order of investigation based on Varnas should be followed only when all of the suitors' troubles are of equal severity. When, on the other hand, the business of the lower caste is very urgent, or the lower Varna is very urgent or very important, it should be taken up first. Now, Medhātithi defends this rule by asserting that the public interest takes precedence over the written word. For he says the investigation of cases is for the purpose of maintaining order in the kingdom, so that the rules laid down need not always be followed literally. So he prioritizes local customs and even pragmatic wisdom in a way. Now we know that there are dissident voices to the to this civilizational vision too. Some scholars using we can say colonial frameworks argue that Dharmic or Hindu Rājya would be a theocratic state, or a civilizational state would be a theocratic state, which is a term of Abrahamic religion. It is important to note that the very way in which Dharmic knowledge traditions make sense of theology, or even as Anantakumara Swami says, a science of the self, is entirely different from the Abrahamic kind. As we have seen, how he even takes Gyan as Shabda Pramana. It is not scriptural authority as the one book goes. So Sanatan Dharma as a complex whole is the kaleidoscopic and yet integrally connected. There are connections. The as we have seen even in the organic ontology approach, it has been conscious civilization that has a continuity of several millennia, and a comprehensive view of the history and culture of the civilizational will not give rise to toxic nationalism or chauvinism as claimed by some scholars, because there is no imposition of one worldview or belief or book or prophet or language or even any ethnicity to otherize the others. Now, there is fundamentally no imperialist or rigid identity or ideology, because the knowledge is not limited to ideas only. There is a performative aspect also, which is more important actually, which in the form of purusharthas, it is to be sustained in the through the state to sustain prosperity, to make the state prosperous. Now, when we say, and this is more from a learner's approach, as I am yet a young scholar, I do not know very much, but for a dharmic, this. So I hope the study of an erudite scholar like Medhātithi and his ideas has helped us to understand some nuances of the dharmic analytical frameworks and political philosophy. And I firmly believe that critical normative excavation of uh, traditional dharmic texts and making sense of the world around us within the ontopistemic lens of their specific traditions is the need of the hour. There has always been a well systemized, flourishing traditions of writing commentaries, critiques, and debates on texts and darshanas in Indic knowledge circles. And we just need to follow that Sanatan tradition of seeking higher and higher knowledge. And Chare Veti is the mantra to go beyond and beyond for higher uh, knowledge. Thank you very much. So this slide is actually a poster of Gita Press, which we can take as a first principles approach whenever we talk about any in the political domain, any theory or concept or institution or framework. Why have we come here? Why do we live here? What is our aim? What are we doing here? And how we are dealing with the world today? Will it be sustainable or will it even be fulfilling? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arjun. Ji, we are very proud of you. At a very young age, you have acquired such deep interest and through deep study, you have acquired such deep knowledge in these areas. And I am able to see that you are incorporating many contemporary parlance words also uh, that are floated by, firstly, the left liberal thought process, words like hegemony and all that have come from post-Marxist or later Marxist literature. We are able to seamlessly incorporate into the discussions about Dharmic thinking on the civilizational state approach. And yeah, that is required. And that speaks a lot about your JNU background also. Uh, and it is required. Actually, uh, the Mimamsakas who wanted to counter Buddhist arguments spent time in learning Buddhist concepts first and incorporated some of that vocabulary. The same thing happened with Gaudapada's uh, Karikas also. Uh, there is an incorporation of some vocabulary from the Buddhists, but there he had to clarify. Oh, because simply I am incorporating their vocabulary, don't think that I am speaking Buddhism. Uh, Naitat Buddhena Bhashitam. This is not actually what Buddha is saying. So you may also have to clarify Naitad Marksena Bhashitam. Matsna Bhashitam or something like that. So because you're incorporating some vocabulary from there. But that's very important. That's really required for this generation. And I think there is a passage by Pankaj Sahaji here, but I
Thank you, sir.
think my guess is that it was addressed to Sriram Balasubramanian ji when he was talking.